Hello, and welcome to this edition of Firearms Friday here at the Wyoming State Museum in Cheyenne. My name is Evan Green. I'm a volunteer here at the museum, and I've been very fortunate to be able to work under the supervision of the staff in updating the inventory of firearms in the museum's permanent collection. So what we're looking at here today is kind of a unique shotgun, believe it or not. It is known in the vernacular as a Forager Shotgun, and I want to go into a little bit of the reason why this particular firearm was developed. On the American frontier after the Civil War, it was not a particularly plush posting for the enlisted men or the officers. They were often isolated in very rough country, faced with aggressive and very well organized adversaries, the Native Americans of the time who resented the intrusion into their hunting grounds. And often on the frontier, we saw troops that were poorly trained, poorly equipped, and poorly fed. And the buffalo soldiers, the freed slaves and freemen who comprised the 9th and 10th Cavalry Regiments and the 24th and 25th Infantry Regiments, got the worst of everything. But even the white soldiers were often unhappy with rations. And in the field, in particular, it was very, very difficult to keep them supplied. In 1876, after the Battle of the Little Bighorn, General George Crook was pursuing a band of Native Americans, I think Cheyenne, towards the Black Hills. And he instigated that pursuit even though he knew that he did not have sufficient rations to reach resupply. So his troops went on half rations, and then they went on quarter rations, and then they started eating their horses and mules. It's known as the Horse Meat March or the Starvation March. There's a quote in a book I'll share with you here in a minute about a 7th Cavalryman who in the field said he was issued 12 hardtack biscuits and a piece of sow belly, and that was his daily ration. He said, I could eat it all for breakfast and still be hungry. So the soldiers were encouraged to do a variety of things. They were encouraged to develop gardens. Well, have you tried to grow a garden lately? In Cheyenne, Wyoming, the hail got ours last year. So where soil conditions permitted and there was ample supply of water, the soldiers would grow gardens in an attempt to supplement the very basic rations that they were receiving as even when they were in the stockade, the rations were not all that generous. The Buffalo soldiers, I think it was the 10th, it was either the 9th or 10th, were stationed at Fort Davis after the Civil War. That's southeast of San Antonio, or southeast of El Paso, and about 50 miles from the Mexican border. They planted a 5-acre garden, but it only yielded vegetables 2 years out of 5. So that was not a necessarily reliable source of essential nutrients for the soldiers. I mentioned Fort Phil Kearny a little bit ago, Carrington's command. He had, I forget the numbers, but a sizable portion of the troopers on active duty at Fort Phil Kearny got scurvy because they didn't have adequate vegetables or any sort of source of vitamin C, even though it had been known for at least 50 years on British ships you provided citrus fruit or juices in kegs or fresh fruit when it was available to prevent scurvy. Their teeth fell out. That would make me very unhappy as a soldier if my teeth were falling out in addition to everything else that I had to deal with. So back to the firearm. So in 1881, General of the Army Sherman said, why don't we provide companies with shotguns so that they can hunt waterfowl and prairie chickens and sage grouse and ducks and geese? So, okay, the general of the Army says, let's do it, and they did it. And what they did was take obsolete Civil War era muskets, cut the barrel down, added a bead front sight out here at the end, bored it out to take a 20 gauge brass shell, shotgun shell. They installed a trapdoor mechanism, and this trapdoor mechanism is interesting, and we'll see it again in the future, but it allowed single feeding of single cartridges directly into the chamber of the firearm. The trapdoor mechanism was developed by a guy at Springfield Armory named Allen, A-L-L-I-N, and his first foray into trapdoors was converting some Civil War muskets into cartridge firing weapons using the trapdoor mechanism. So when it came time to issue these shotguns or develop these shotguns for use by foragers in the field, Springfield Armory took Civil War muskets, bored out the barrel, used the stock, and cut it down from a full-length stock to a very well-proportioned, in my opinion, short forearm attached with one screw, and buttstock pretty much unaltered. And these were issued 2 shotguns to every company and 1,000 rounds of ammunition per year, so that they could forage for fresh game. And of course, where it was allowed, there was also hunting for large game using standard issue firearms. And often, the hunters, the people assigned to that duty, were the civilian scouts that were accompanying the enlisted men and officers, because they were often very familiar with the country. They knew how to track, they knew how to stalk game, whereas your average trooper might have come right out of New York City or Boston or straight from Ireland or Germany and had no idea of how to effectively hunt. So that was the reason for the development of this foraging. It's called the Forager, but that's a new term. It was not called that at the time. So if you're interested in what frontier life was like, I would recommend a couple of books to you. I particularly like this one. It's called 40 Miles a Day on Beans and Hay. And it goes into excruciating detail about how tough it was at frontier posts and in the field during the Indian Wars on the American frontier. This is the one I mentioned earlier that gives a vivid description of General Crook's Horsemeat March. This is the Sioux War of 1876. So it covers the Rosebud, where Crook was checked on his way to connect with Custer. It covers the Battle of the Little Bighorn and the subsequent attempts by various regiments of cavalry to track down and chastise the Sioux and Cheyenne who were involved in the Battle of the Little Bighorn. Either one of those books or both excellent reference, and they're available by order through the museum's gift shop if you can't find them from other sources. They may be available in the library. So we're going to take a break again and put the shotgun away, and we'll look at some shotgun ammunition. Okay, we have put the shotgun away, and all the firearms are in safe storage at this point. And we'll take this opportunity to show you what the Forager shotgun, the trapdoor Springfield shotgun, used. This is an inert cartridge case. It is a 20 gauge case. You can see that there's no primer and certainly no charge. So this is the ammunition that would have been used in that Forager shotgun. And just for comparison's sake, this is a live round. This is a 12 gauge brass shotgun cartridge or shotgun shell. And you can see that it has here a live primer in this end. and a paper wad that retains the shot in the cartridge. So anyway, 12 gauge, 20 gauge, this would have been an example of the 1,000 rounds of ammunition that were issued along with 2 Forager shotguns to companies on the western frontier during the Indian War period. Thanks again for watching. Contact us if you have questions or comments.